So this week we're happy to have a return visit from Busho Long, one of our Minnesota cousins. And if I knew it, I've lost track of what your topic is this week. I'll let you fill us in on that.
Is vast and subtle. Dharma is vast and subtle. We now have a chance. We now have a chance to see it. And practices. Study this and practice this. Realize its true meaning. May we realize its true meaning.
Well, is everybody hearing me okay if I speak at this volume? That's good? Okay. Thank you. It's lovely to be back at Nebraska Zen Center. This is probably my, I don't know, third, fourth, maybe more visit? I don't know. Third. Thank you. There are smarter people in the room than I. Thank you to Pam and thank you to Tara for doing the logistical organizing with times and dates and all that kind of stuff. And I apologize. I was on vacation when I received the request for the title and topic of today's talk, and I typed out a lovely little email response to you on my phone, and I sent it off, very trusting of the hotel's Wi-Fi. And it turns out that it disappeared into the vast emptiness, and I'm afraid you never received it, which means I figured that out last night at about 10 p.m.
No problem.
And sent an email that's absolutely pointless. So it's lovely to be here again. What I'm going to talk about a little bit before I jump in, I'll just say I want to talk today about relationship with thinking, relationship with thought consciousness, objects of consciousness, as we talk about it in our tradition. I'm borrowing some of what I'm going to play with from the Satipatthana Sutta, for those of you who are familiar with the Buddha's original instruction on foundations of mindfulness and that kind of stuff from the Pali Canon. The Satipatthana Sutta is a brilliant resource for all of us, of course. So if that's something that you are unfamiliar with, give it a look. Give it a look. It's easy to find online. There are many different translations of the Satipatthana, and it's not. There are parts that are a little rough, but it's not. It's pretty accessible. It's probably 10 pages or something like that, and it's actually pretty accessible for pretty much all of us. So give it a read. Give it a read. And the second thing I want to say before I jump in is I'm aware that this morning I'm talking to Nebraska Zen Center, and you folks have been around a long time. There's a really good, healthy core group there of deep and devoted practitioners, and so I'm aware that that's my audience today. I don't know that I would talk about this kind of stuff with folks who are brand new necessarily. Not that I see it as particularly advanced, but what I'm aware of is in our tradition, like many contemplative traditions, the first weeks, the first months, even the first years of practice are primarily devoted to kind of developing a seat, right? Just getting used to sitting upright, getting used to staying still, getting used to noticing emotions and recognizing them for what they are, getting used to recognizing the movement of breath and getting closer to it, getting used to being the observer of our thoughts right? And the one who makes a decision about where we want our awareness to go. Does that seem like a fair thing to say? I hope that I hope that seems like a fair thing. So what I'm saying is at the beginning that, oh, I see there's thinking and I'm not going there, I'm coming back here, to me feels like a very skillful instruction. But I'm also aware that that is by no means the end of practice, and that practice invites us at some point to be in compassionate relationship with all aspects of consciousness, of experience. And so I kind of want to play with that today. I gave a version of this talk at Minnesota Zen Center, which is one of the two places I teach up here in the Twin Cities. So a version of this talk is on their website. A version of this talk is on my website, flyingcloudzen.org. And now you're going to get another version. So it's kind of fun, isn't it, to watch the Dharma just sort of turn around and shed its skin and become something else, and then shed its skin and then become something else. It feels appropriate to me. So, all right. Does that sound like a good preface?
Sounds
All
good.
right. All right, I will jump in. I've set a timer here next to me to keep me honest. The title of my talk today is It's Never Really About the Chicken, which I just think is a great title for a talk. Even if the rest of the thing tanks, you can take that with you. It's never really about the chicken. So here's what I want to start with. I'm going to start by reading a short section to you from a book that I read recently called Seek You, A Journey Through American Loneliness by a woman named Kristen Radke. And Seek You, A Journey Through American Loneliness came out relatively recently, and I found it fascinating. And so when I got to this section of the book, it jumped off the page at me and went, oh, that's Dharma. There's a talk there. So you might hear that as I'm reading it to you. You might kind of have a sense by the time I'm done with this paragraph of, oh, I bet you I know where this is going. And I think that's part of the subtlety of awareness that all of us develop after a while as we start realizing Dharma doesn't just happen in the Zendo at Nebraska Zen Center, and it doesn't just happen right when I'm reading the Satipatthana Sutta or Dogen, right, or Katagiri Roshi. We begin to hear it, right? We begin to see it. We begin to experience it as everywhere, right? So this was one of those experiences for me. Okay, so this is from Seek You by Kristen Radke. Every night, 25 people sit in a room before a row of telephones on Britain's northern coast. It is 2 a.m. and someone is having trouble sleeping. It's 2:30 and someone misses his brother. It's 4 a.m. and someone can't stand the quiet anymore. The people listen and they understand. They tell the callers that they too sometimes have a hard time sleeping, that they too know what it's like to miss someone. Sophie Andrews is the CEO of the Silver Line, an organization that fields calls from lonely seniors. The day before Christmas, a man calls to ask how to cook a chicken, and Sophie answers. A gas stove? Okay. Preheat to 170 Celsius. Season the cavity, that's the inside, yep, at the bottom, with salt and pepper and a little lemon if you've got it. Tuck the legs under and you'll know it's done when the juices run clear. Do you have a meat thermometer? Okay, pierce the chicken in the thigh. That's the best place to test. The man calling has never cooked a chicken before, he tells Sophie, but it's his first Christmas since his wife died, and so he thinks that it's best he learns. The Silver Line takes more than 10,000 calls every week. There are no questions too big, no problems too small, no need to be alone, their brochures say. They are the busiest in the middle of the night, followed by bedtime and early morning. People like to check in, Sophie says. The Silver Line calls it signposting. Without the calls, she tells me, some of those people would go days without speaking. Now, he wouldn't have called up and said, "Hello, my wife died this year," Sophie says about the man who wanted to cook the chicken. It took 20 minutes of talking about something else before he got to say how he felt. It's never really about the chicken. So that's where I want to start. That's where I want to start. And you know what? It occurs to me as I'm saying this. I can see how attentively you're all listening. Just take 10 seconds to check in with yourself. How do you feel? Just how is your body? Maybe you're noticing something. Maybe not. That's an interesting story, and it's a very evocative story, I think. So it's just good to notice the movements, right? So I read that section of the book and I went, there it is. It took 20 minutes of talking about something else before he got to say how he felt. That was the talk. That's when it popped into my mind. So we learn that the Silver Line in Northern Britain takes 10,000 calls a week. That's 1,500 calls every day to a phone line that offers nothing but a listening presence. That's one phone line in one country out of nearly 200 countries on this planet. Many of those countries are much, much more populous than England. And if there are 1,500 people who actually call, we can ask ourselves how many do not. So what I'm hoping is, I hope that this sounds like your life. What I hope is that this sounds like your own inner experience. And if you said Zazen, and all of us here today do, then it certainly should. Because how many thoughts do you bear witness to in one period of Zazen? How many phone calls is that per day inside one person? So this short passage from a non-Buddhist practitioner who's just interested in studying loneliness is perhaps accidentally a perfect example of how we learn to bear witness to ourselves, to our own suffering, and to the suffering of all beings in our practice, right? The first thing she outlines there is that we listen. There's a choice made to actively engage. We listen. The second thing is we understand. Do you feel that there's a deeper level of engagement there? I'm not just hearing now. Now I'm beginning to understand. And then finally, and arguably the most important for this section of her book and for what we're going to talk about today, is that we stay long enough to discover what's real. Right? We listen, we understand, and we stay long enough to discover what's real. I hope that kind of sounds like meditation to you. Right? I sit Zazen, I listen to the chatter, and if I dismiss it as just chatter, as all of it being insignificant or unimportant or dead, you can feel that I might be in danger of missing something important. Right now, I'm aware, again, because of the audience, this group that we are today, we're experienced meditators. We get pretty good at identifying chatter that really is just chatter. It's just white noise, background, stuff that happens in the brain. Yep, chatter is chatter. That's true. But it can also be the contents of consciousness, the contents of thinking consciousness can also be evidence that we ignore at our peril as Zen practitioners, because there is a huge difference between the brain's habit of chatter for the sake of chatter and mind's habit of turning emotions into thoughts and problems to solve. Right? I'm going to say that again because I feel like that's an important distinction. I know we all understand this, but I just really want to make sure this is clear. There's a huge difference that we come to recognize between the brain, that's an organ, right? The brain's habit of chatter for the sake of chatter, right? And mind's, that's capital M mind, Buddhist mind, mind's habit of turning emotions into thoughts and problems to solve. So one of the crucial natures of a stiller mind, and one of the central reasons that we're instructed to continue to cultivate a stiller mind, is that the stiller the mind we're observing, the easier it is to track the dynamics that we're talking about here, right? It's not actually that stiller mind is better somehow than busy mind. Who cares? This is Zen, right? Busy mind is just busy mind. Still mind is just still mind. No one's winning. There's not an evaluation placed. But we're given that instruction early, right? When we're students, early on, to help to still the mind, the brain, the thoughts that we are observing, because then it becomes easier to see the dynamic, right? Because it happens so fast, doesn't it? All of us know this. Like, oh my goodness, it happened so fast. I was sitting zazen and my thoughts were very, very, very quiet and everything was great. And the person next to me cleared their throat and then woof, off I was to the races. And emotions came and sensations came and then thinking came and then a story came and I remembered my grandpa. And before you know it, right? Wow, it happens fast. So cultivating, just slow it down, slow it down, slow it down, isn't because slow is better or winning or good. It's because, oh, now I can see how these things happen. It happens so quickly, right? So because we begin to see more clearly and they begin to happen, the movements of mind more slowly, it's easier to see the arises, the changes, and the fallings away, right, of our impulses and our emotions and our thoughts. It's easier to see the patterns, don't you think? It's easier to see the connections, right? So our practice and our traditions practice of the cultivation of mental quietude has a place, a really important place, because of the potential that that has for this skillful application, right? We don't need to try to stop to do that. But we do need, at some point, to start being consciously aware of the fact that we are doing it. I'm slowing everything down, and why we're choosing to do that slowing down. Is this making sense? At least a little bit? I tend to emphasize this a lot because stillness for the sake of stillness is still a misunderstanding, basically, about what Zazen is about. Stillness is fine. It's not a bad thing. It's a lovely thing. When it arises, wonderful. But stillness for the sake of stillness is not what meditation is about in this tradition, right? It forgets the guiding principle under which all of our practice takes place, and that is the spiritual ideal of compassion and the accompanying wisdom, right? That it is kind presence alone, love, we could say, that heals internally and externally. That's why we have Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva to remind us. The central guiding principle in all of Mahayana Buddhism, compassion, and the accompanying wisdom that knows only loving relationship heals. It's the only thing that does. Right? So we can quiet the mind in order to begin to see what's underneath those waves and go, oh, there underneath is the suffering that's wanting the relationship. So I love the story about this old guy and the chicken. I just love it. I have no idea what he looks like. I have no idea what his name is. I have no idea how old he is, but I immediately love this guy because he's really, really lonely and he's in a hell of a lot of pain. But he can't pick up the phone and say, I'm really, really lonely. Will you listen to me? Talk about my wife, how much I miss her, how quiet the house is, how hard this is for me to have Christmas without her. All he can do is go thinking about a chicken, turn it into a problem to solve. How do I cook a chicken, and ask for advice? And because wonderful Sophie is wise enough to listen long enough, sooner or later, after 20 odd minutes, she gets to, oh, gotcha. So if that whole thing was Zazen, and I noticed my brain going, chicken, 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 how do you cook a chicken? And all I said was, go away thoughts, go away thoughts, go away thoughts, go away thoughts, not interested, thinking is bad, not interested, not doing it. I'd miss, it was a messenger. I'd miss the fact there was something underneath that was desperately wanting my attention. There was suffering that was calling out, and that was the only way it knew to call out. That was the only way it knew. Turn into thinking, and turn the thinking into a problem to solve. That's what will get his attention. That's what gets his attention. Does that kind of make sense? I know I can't be alone in this, right? So, as we all know, despite despite the insisting of our popular culture, right? A quiet brain isn't Zen. And all of us know this because we're Zen students, right? People misunderstand us all the time. Oh, you Zen guys must be just still all the time. You think, why do you think that? Have you ever sat meditation? Do you have any idea what a circus it is up there, right? I mean, come on. Like, oh, it must be lovely. Oh, you went on retreat for a week. Oh, that sounds so nice. Thing. Oh, man, you have no clue. You have no clue. Oh, no, this is direct engagement with human suffering. I mean, are you kidding? It's the opposite of what we think, of what most folks think culturally, right? But we know this. We get to know, of course, a quiet brain isn't Zen, nor is an agitated brain, right? Zen is what recognizes the agitated brain. Zen is what relates to the agitated brain, right? And similarly, peaceful emotions aren't Zen, nor are upset ones. Zen, this thing we do, is what recognizes, relates to the peaceful emotions, to the upset emotions. That's the part of us that recognizes it, that relates to it, that holds it. Now we're talking about compassion, right? So Zen, of course, we know this. It isn't a particular state. States are impermanent, right? They come and they go. If my Zen is dependent on a still mind and easy emotions and comfortable body, then my Zen is made of very, very thin glass. That's not Zen, right? Zen is indestructible. Zen is unbounded. Zen is unconditioned, right? It is by definition birthless and deathless. So it cannot arise when comfort and peace and stillness come, and then disappear again when discomfort or upset or agitation arise, right? Because this is Zen. Wow. Okay, so back to the chicken guy. My chicken guy. I really like this guy. I love the metaphor of this line of phones, because it feels to me like when I sit down and the bell rings, right, the dawn rings the bell, and it's time for 30 minutes of Zazen, what I start hearing, metaphorically speaking, is nothing but ringing phones, right? Here's a body wants my attention, here's an emotion wants my attention, here's a thought wants my attention, here's a distraction from those phones, here's a better phone call, here's an even better phone call than that last phone call. Wouldn't you rather take this phone call? There's the ringing phone I never, ever, ever, ever even want to know or acknowledge is ringing. Thank you very little. No, thank you. Do you feel it? It feels like being in a room to me of 20 phones just ringing and ringing and ringing. And sometimes it's only 10 phones ringing, and sometimes it's only one phone. Oh, the blessed silence of only one insistent phone, right? So we could have talked, we could have called this talk today, answer the damn phone, because that's what Zen does at some point, right? The point of Zen isn't ignore your thoughts forever until they go away. Number one, they won't. Number two, what's the point of that? There's no wisdom in that. There's no compassion in that. Zen isn't about ignoring things, right? But we are, as ego consciousness, we are very habituated to ignoring the ringing. Of course we are. Of course we are. All of us are. I am. All of us are. And so then we come to Zazen. We come to something like meditation. And it promises us, oh, this blessed quiet we're going to get, it's going to be so nice. Oh, so no wonder we grab onto it. The idea of using meditation to get to something called no more ringing phones. And so we tend to use Zazen that way. I know, we all tend to do that. It tends to, if we're not careful, become a barrier between our conscious awareness and that waterfall of thoughts, right? We all have this tendency. So the key here isn't to make a demon out of that tendency, folks. The key is just to notice that we do it, right? The fallacies there are easy to see. The fallacies that we all tend to carry around busy mind, still mind, ringing phones, quiet phones. The first one is probably pretty obvious to most of us. The first one is the idea that having a busy mind, like having a lot of thinking going on in the brain, that is suffering. Like, oh, if only I could still my mind, then I'd. Like, that does not hold up under any kind of investigation, folks. Like, we know that. Like, if I actually look at that, I find that is, in my experience, not actually true at all. In my experience, a busy thought-thinking brain is just that. It's just a busy thought-thinking brain. It's busy thinking lots of thoughts. That can happen for me when I'm excited and I'm energized and I'm engaged with something. I get to watch my brain make connections and see patterns and understand and create. That's a busy brain. There are lots of thoughts. I'm not experiencing that as suffering, right? And conversely, again, personally, I've had lots of experiences of having my brain move very quietly and very, very slowly in the midst of great anxiety, great sadness, even despair, right? Talk to somebody with pretty severe depression. They're not going to describe a busy mind. They're going to describe a very heavy, very slow mind, right? Lots of suffering there. So busy mind equals suffering, still mind equals no, doesn't hold up, right? And then the second thing that we tend, again, all of us, we tend to unconsciously believe, this kind of supposition we seem to collectively make about mental activity in meditation traditions, is that the mental activity has nothing to offer, that it's all chatter. Just because some of it's chatter, we tend to think, right? And much of it, as our story today says, is actually not chatter. It's a really important breadcrumb. And we can follow it to find this really important thing underneath, right? So I'm going to use a metaphor here because I know everything I'm talking about is relatively abstract. I don't know if this metaphor works. I just don't know if it works, but I'm using it because it's all that came to me. Here's my story. When I was 10, so I was raised Catholic, right? Raised Christian, so we do Christmas, tree, gifts, the whole thing. So I'm about 10. My mom decides she's going to buy my father a guitar for Christmas. That's going to be the big present. Dad's going to get a guitar, right? So she wrapped it and she put it under the tree. Now, we did not have a box big enough to fit a full-size guitar, which kind of makes sense. That's a pretty large object. And so she just wrapped the guitar case, right? So when you come out on Christmas morning and you see this thing, it's pretty obvious, right? What is underneath that crazy Santa patterned wrapping paper, right? The wrapping isn't the gift, but it often follows the shape of the gift. It gives us pretty important clues. This is a clumsy metaphor, I know, but I like it because it uses the word gift to describe what's underneath. That guy's chicken instruction was covering the gift. The gift was his loneliness. Emotions are important. They are incredibly important. That's why in the Satipatthana Sutta, when you look it up later, you will see that the Buddha taught be mindful of your emotions before he taught be mindful of your volitions and impulses, and before he taught be mindful of your thinking consciousness and thought consciousness. Mindfulness, kind awareness of, curious relationship to, undefended connection with emotions is incredibly important because they are so dense and there's so much incredibly important information there about the human experience, right? So if we are not careful, we are shooing away all of our crazy Santa pattern thoughts, and we're missing that what's underneath is something really, really important, right? So you can practice this on yourself in your Zazen. I know you know that. I know all Dharma talks are intended to give you a piece of something, an idea, a teaching, a concept, an insight that we immediately turn into practice because this is Zen, right? We learn down here, right? It isn't taught, it's caught, Zen, right? So you get to practice this on yourself. When you are doing Zazen and you notice chatter that's very clearly just chatter, you get to go, okay, cool, I see that you're there. I'm coming back to body and breath. Thank you. Easy enough. We're all used to doing that. But when you start to notice, boy, that one comes back over and over, doesn't it? That one's come back over and over, doesn't it? Wow, no matter how many times I shoo that one away, it comes back. I wonder what's going on. Do you feel how that's dropping down one more layer in? What's underneath that thought? How does thinking that make me feel? right? What's underneath that? Is there a feeling underneath that? Is there like a need that I have that's related to that feeling that's showing up as this thinking? Chicken down to lonely is feeling, down to the need is I just want connection. I just want somebody to listen to me for a few minutes. Do you feel it? Compassion, emotion, thinking. Ah, the story leads us to the feeling. The feeling leads us to the need. Wow. Now we're starting. Can you feel it? We're getting human here. It's beautiful to bring our loving awareness, our compassionate awareness, our bodhisattvic wise awareness down into these layers of the human. This is how we heal. This is how we heal that person, the person whose body you're living inside right now. And we also can practice this externally. I would suggest doing it internally. That's the purview of Zen. But you also can get to do it externally when you're listening to somebody who's telling you the stories about their chicken, whatever that is. You can actually ask yourself, maybe you want to ask them too, but at least internally you can go, I wonder how they're feeling as they're telling me about the Viking game later on today. How are they feeling? I'm from Minnesota, right? How are they feeling when they're telling me about the snowfall? How are they feeling when they're telling me about how their grandkids were hoping to visit over Christmas, but they couldn't because the flight was canceled? I wonder what they're feeling right now. I wonder what they're needing. Can you kind of feel how this is taking this awareness practice that we're trying so hard to cultivate every day as Zen students? You know, we're so devoted. We sit down every day and we cross our legs and we face the wall. Why? To practice paying really kind attention to the experience of a human being, because we realize that's an incredibly powerful thing to know how to do. I'm much less reactive. I'm much more vibrantly awake and aware of what's happening here. And I'm beginning to understand, oh my God, you're no different. All of this is just about developing connective tissue, right? Compassionate connective tissue to the human experience, right? And I know I have to start wrapping up here. So here's where I want to end. I'm going to go back to Kristen Radke, our author, because Kristen Radke, again, accidentally, I don't know if she's a Buddhist or not. By the end of the book, I was like, geez, you must have read at least a little, because this sounds very Buddhist to me. She's near the end of her book now, right? And the whole book, again, is examining American loneliness, just how it's kind of built into our culture and our society. It's a fascinating book. But near the end, she's beginning to draw some of her own personal conclusions, right, about the nature of suffering and the particular form of suffering that we call loneliness, right? Because that's her purview. So she says this. She says, I've come to see my loneliness as an inevitability rather than an indictment. It's a condition that will continue to go in and out of remission in ways that I can never reliably track. So again, as a Buddhist, I read that one. Oh, there it is. Yes, you are so wonderful, Kristen. Of course it's an inevitability. It's dukkha. It's dukkha. Of course it's an inevitability. Loneliness will show up, and then sadness, and then despair, and then confusion, and then happiness, and hope. Of course it'll show up again. Yes. But her word choice is so brilliant. Instead of an indictment, in other words, it's a pathology. Are you lonely again? You must be doing something wrong. What is wrong with you? Can you feel it? An indictment, a judgment, a criticism, a condemnation. Oh my God. She figured out all by her little self, wait, that's not an indictment. There's nothing wrong with me. This is just a human experience that everybody has. And further, she is aware it comes in and out and in and out in ways I can never reliably track. Can you feel the acceptance there? I'm just like, Kristen Radke, that is so awesome. The depth of the acceptance of, oh, you're here, lonely. Hello, is what I hear in that. Maybe a less friendly hello. Maybe, oh, hello. Right? But what I hear in that, and the reason this is so important, is the acceptance. Oh, right, you are here. I don't need to cover you. I don't need to run from you. I don't need to escape from you. I may or may not call the silver lion. I can do that. But the point of a Buddhist practitioner's practice is to go, this is the suffering right here, right now. And because my vows are to turn toward this forever, to turn toward this and hold it and be in relationship with it and be curious about it and stay connected to it forever, I don't need to ask for any of this stuff to be different. I don't need to ask for any of it to be different. So the call being placed is by me. The one picking up that call is me, and I get to listen. I get to understand what's going on. I get to stay long enough and bear witness to my own stuff to discover what's real. And then finally, again, this is Mahayana Buddhism. What we trust is that this discovery of, oh, there's the suffering. I'll be kind to that. That kind relationship has an immediate healing potential for not only us, but for an infinite number of others. Right? This, to touch with compassion, to touch any experience with kindness and compassion, you know what I mean, to touch it, to feel it. To touch with compassion in our tradition is to embody and enact the functioning of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva in the field of time and space. Right? To discern truth, what's actually going on here with wisdom, that is to embody and enact the functioning of Manjushri Bodhisattva in the field of time and space. Right? We get to be those things by going, oh, there it is, bang, now I am that. There's no separation, right? So that's the pilgrimage we've all been invited on. How beautiful it is. How beautiful it is that all of us here today, even by being here, are saying yes to that. Okay, that's as much as I need to offer you. But I thank you. I thank you for your attention. I really do. And my understanding is we have some time here to play around a little bit in the sandbox if people have stuff they want to offer. Or...
That's correct.
Yeah, I'm at your service.
Vicky's got a question.
Hi there, thank you for the talk. I'm reminded of the don't judge the quality of your zazen. It's so easy to say, oh my gosh, I didn't follow my breath for the, following past 10 minutes, therefore I'm a bad meditator, I'm doing something wrong. And I remember one time I was really, really angry, and I came and I sat for an hour, and I probably followed my breath once, maybe twice if I was lucky. And it's easy to say, oh my gosh, I was doing it wrong, but it's not about doing it wrong. I had to sit with that mind because I was very upset. And it's so easy to want judgment on yourself that you're doing something wrong.
Amen to that. Isn't that true? Amen to that. Yeah, seeing that critic function, seeing the judge function, right? Seeing that condemning function is absolutely crucial. I don't think we ever outgrow it. We just, oh, I see you, and now I'm not you. But just exactly what you're saying so skillfully. Oh, I see. Oh, I see. I see the judge. I see the critic. There you are. Okay. I am not that. I see you. Okay. Gotcha.
I still want it to be, especially for me, it's not loneliness that arises, it's usually anxiety. And I'm like, oh shit, instead of saying, okay, here you are, like you said, hello, because I still want it to be different.
Yeah. That's kind of ego consciousness's job, isn't it? I sure hear you. Yep, you're in good company. You are not alone.
This is Pam. One thought that came to me during your talk, which I'm not sure it is different from what you're saying, but it reminded me of some of the most productive exercises in my practice have been reductionist. In other words, it's like putting a pot of something with shrimp shells or something on the stove and making a reduction by boiling it down. You're letting a lot of stuff evaporate off, and then coming down to the heart of things. So I was thinking also of practices that I've done with teachers in the past where they'll ask a question, you answer that question, and then there's another question about that answer. And it's a process of just what's underneath that, what's underneath it. Was that related to what you're saying here?
Oh, 100% for me. I love the reduction metaphor. Actually, that idea that this soup is a little watery. If I leave this simmer, for another hour, that idea of what this feels like, Pam, if I'm hearing you right, is the discernment that we start to develop between what's chatter, 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 what boils off more or less. Like, yeah, there wasn't anything actually there. And what, wait, no, this is going to stay in the soup. There's something here. I notice this in myself. Because of how I'm wired, I tend to be future focused. So when my mind wanders during Zazen, it's more likely to go to the future than to the past. So it tends to take the form of planning. It loves to plan. So that's problem solving. I'm inventing something that needs to be done. There's a problem to be solved. I can then think about it. And it took me probably a decade to realize, oh, that's just anxiety. That's just fear. Like, fear is down here. It's dense. An emotion is denser than thinking. So I love the reduction idea, because what's being boiled off is, oh, I'm planning because I'm scared. And I imagine that maybe if I plan really carefully, everything will be fine and I won't have to experience this feeling. Got it. But that's that digging that you're talking about, Pam, of going, up here's, Friday night's dinner party that I'm so nervous about. Underneath that is, what would happen if people didn't like me? And then underneath that is, oh, I'm scared. That's what's going on. But this is sort of dense. It's at the bottom of the pot. It's not going anywhere. But the form it's taking of, what about Friday's dinner party? When that's gone, it'll be something else. It'll be something else. It'll be something else. Kind of like adding water to the soup. You add more and you boil it off, and you add more and you boil it off. So yes, I think that's exactly right. Zazen is a reduction. That'd be a good Dharma talk title, wouldn't it? The reduction of Zazen. Yeah.
Feel free. But yeah, this was really useful talk to me, because lately I've been focusing more on, with the out breath, just kind of blowing the dust out of the room to create an empty room, which is a totally different, it's kind of wiping the slate. So this is useful to kind of bring me back to another place in it.
Yeah, I like your metaphor. The one that our tradition gives us most often is the mirror. The Huineng's mirror polishing. Of course, there's a place for polishing the mirror, but I think the implication of the metaphor is, oh, now I can see more clearly. And I know Pema Chodron she's not a Zen person, but all of us know her name pretty well. And she's the one who says, oh yeah, that old Buddhist metaphor of the silty water, the cloudy water, just set it down still and then it will settle. Won't that be nice? Oh yes, it'll settle. And the water will become clear, return to its natural state. Yes, it's very nice. And what we neglect to tell people is it's actually a lake, and when all that water gets clear, you'll see what's at the bottom of the lake, and it's boots and old batteries and McDonald's wrappers, and there's a lot of stuff down there you have to deal with. So now we're back to your reduction metaphor again. Yes, the clean room. I love it. I love it. Thank you, Pam.
I have one thing to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for your talk. I really enjoyed that. And it brought up a lot of stuff for me. And the first thing that brought up, do you remember, Pam, like a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about we were trying to define what generosity is.
Yeah.
Like what is generosity? Mm-hmm. And so that was an interesting discussion. And so what you were talking about here reminded me a lot of the things that we were trying to say. Maybe, I landed on, like, at the core of it, it's the quality of attention that we offer other people. And I currently am working in a human service field that deals a lot with older adults, and trying to establish, like, trust and rapport in those relationships is really key. And so what you were talking about specifically, as far as that quality of attention, from what I heard, it's like, it's an openness, it's a slowing down, it's non-judgmental, and it's receptive. And when you can create that quality of attention and share that with somebody, it's so powerful. And it is like, it's the only thing that's necessary and even needed when somebody is suffering. And to me, it also means that and everybody recognizes it. Everybody, like, if you can bring that, everybody responds to it without exception. But more powerfully, maybe, is if you can do that for yourself, like in Zazen, Like, it's like a self-reinforcing thing where you can practice it with other people, and then there's this mutuality, and then you bring that back to your cushion, and then it reinforces that, and you just get into this like this feedback loop, like, and it's really special. Like, it's pretty great.
Brilliant. I'm so glad you took back the projection at the end. That's so nice when you go, wait, hold on a minute. Oh no, this is me. Oh, it's me. Of course, I completely agree with you. Isn't that lovely? I love what you said there, because you're speaking of some universal Buddhist truths. You know them. I'll give them back to you really quick though, and that is, number one, my capacity for compassion is my capacity for compassion, full stop. There is no such thing as, oh, I've got so much compassion for others, but I don't have any for myself. No, and no. That is not a thing. We love to say that because, God, it makes us sound good. But no, and no. We were raised in a culture where, oh, I'm going to give to other people, and that'll mean something good about me, and that'll be good. And therefore, we separate compassion from self-compassion. Give me a break. Our tradition never separated those things. There's not even a term self-compassion before the tradition gives here. Why would there be? It doesn't even make sense. So I love what you said, which is, oh my God, my capacity for compassion is my capacity for compassion. So if I can't be with this, and this, by the way, is the suffering that I can feel in my cells. I can feel in my chest. It quickens my heart. It shortens my breath. It shows up as choking in my own throat. This is right here. I can touch this one. This is not abstract. This is not, oh, I imagine how you must feel being lonely after losing your wife and wondering how to cook a chicken. Do you feel it? It's right here. Right? So we start to get, thank you for what you said. We start to get why the Buddha was like, number one, where's your body right now? Number two, where's your breath right now? Number three, what are you feeling right now? Number four, what are your volitions and your impulses? Number five, where are your thoughts? That centrality of it's carnal, it's in you, it's your body right now. Oh, I love it. So you are saying something so important, which is my capacity for self-compassion is my capacity for other compassion. They are not two things. And then more abstractly, and this is another talk for another day, for all of us who know a little bit about Yogacara Buddhism, or even the idea in Zen that it's mind only anyway. You know, it's not the flag or the wind, it's mind. What you just said has another layer of importance, because the person that you're helping isn't different from you. It's you. It's you, it's all you. There is only you, and there isn't a you there. But, you know, we all chanted the Heart Sutra this morning. There is no patient. There is no client. There is no spouse. There is no other. And so that, again, that idea of, oh, how I'm bearing witness to you is mutually healing because there isn't a separation. So this practice we're so committed to doing on the cushion for ourselves every day, where is my pain? Can I hold it? Can I relate to it? Can I love it anyway? Becomes really, now there's the conduit for healing the world. So thank you. You said that wonderfully. Thank you. I got all excited about that one, didn't I? I always do. Oh.
My name is Mike. You can't see me because I'm over on the corner, but I've been reading a book called Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. A lot of what you said about listening to people as they talk and observing like the feelings behind that and the needs behind that was like 100% with like what I read yesterday. So I just want to say that's connecting with me, which is great.
I'm glad to hear it, disembodied voice. For all of you who do not know, Disembodied Voice has just recommended to all of us a fantastic resource. His name is Marshall Rosenberg. He is not a Buddhist. He wrote a book called Nonviolent Communication. He ended up starting a whole center devoted to nonviolent communication. And it is so hand in glove with what we do in this tradition about looking carefully at the layers of consciousness and understanding, taking apart the self so that we can see what's actually there. The stuff that he's passed now, Marshall, unfortunately, we lost him a few years ago. But the teachings of nonviolent communication are literally internal. I'm communicating, I am listening, I am speaking, I am relating internally, non-violently. Oh my God, that's mindfulness. That's literally what he's talking about. The person telling you that story, there's another story underneath it that's so vital. So yes, you are correct. He also uses the language of feelings and needs, which I think is central to every Buddhist practitioner. The people I work with, oh, they get so tired of feelings and need. I just pummel them with it all the time. I'm relentless. I'm relentless. It is my absolute belief that if I'm a good Buddhist practitioner at any day, at any time, randomly, someone should be able to say, what are you feeling right now? And I should be able to list at least 3 emotions and all of the attendant basic human needs that are underneath those things, because I'm supposed to be a self-aware guy. That's kind of my jam, right? Mr. Zen Pants should at least know how he's feeling and what that feeling is about. That's pretty basic stuff. So yes, thank you. Keep reading Marshall Rosenberg. He is fabulous. I got excited about that one too.
Thank you. Anyone else? A question, comment?
I'd like to jump in here quick. Thank you also again for your talk. It really resonated, and I think this really like great vulnerability that you're highlighting is just essential, and it's been a hard lesson for me to learn over the years. But I wanted to ask about sort of making use of this gift, playing the guitar once you've unwrapped it. I know, for example, there are so many people who have a lot of dissatisfaction with their careers, with their line of work, but are like, I still need to pay rent. I need to feed my kids. I don't know what else I would do here. There's this tendency where you can, be very vulnerable and get down to the roots of what you're feeling here, but not knowing how to impact that, and knowing what else you can do. The guitar tends to just wind up collecting dust on a stand somewhere, and I do have a literal guitar doing that, even though I do that like emotionally. So I wanted to ask about that circumstance, if you sit with it in Zazen, but you don't know how to bring that insight into your life, what do you do then?
Yeah, thank you, Max. Thank you. That's a great question. Did everybody hear that and kind of get the gist of what he's going for here? Okay, okay, good. Okay, good. Hey, I've got a dusty guitar in the corner of my room too. I like a literal dusty guitar in the corner of my room. I know we're short on time, so for the sake of kind of simplicity, um, for the sake of simplicity, I'll do this. 2 things. First is the Pam's reduction idea of going, wait, I'm a Buddhist practitioner. I've studied enough of this tradition to know that like my job causes me suffering is not a true thing. Of course, it's not a true thing because it's something external to me and that can't cause me suffering. So the reduction idea of going, wait, how do I actually feel? And what need is that related to? Now we're back to Marshall Rosenberg. Like, how do I feel? What do I need? How do I feel? What do I need? How do I feel? What do I need? That's an incredibly powerful tool. I'm making it sound really simple because it is. It's simple. I'm also making it sound easy. That's a lie. I'm lying to you. It is not easy. It is hard to do. It takes discipline. We get really, really good at doing it. But instead of going, wait, as soon as the political regime changes, I will be happy. As soon as the job changes, I will be happy. As soon as my spouse takes her wet towel off the bathroom floor, I'll be happy. As soon as. In other words, as a Buddhist, we all know, oh, I notice that I'm going external again. Right. That's fine. But I immediately, as a practitioner, then turn that inside and go, wait, what's inside me right now? Where's my body? Where's my breath? How do I feel? What's that actually about? Where's my body? Where's my breath? How do I feel? What's that actually about? Oh, I feel sad and frustrated when I'm at work because my boss is always very trite and he treats me poorly. My need for respect isn't met. The need to just be seen and heard and valued, it's not happening. No wonder I'm frustrated. No wonder I'm sad. Oh, I see what's going on. Do you feel that right now internally, I am beginning to relate kindly to the part of me that says like, oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm frustrated. I don't feel seen. I don't feel included or valued. Internally on the cushion, I'm actually going, I see you. You're important. I'm listening. Do you feel it? I'm meeting the need right now in real time. Oh my God, I've just done Avalokiteshvara, which is, I see that you're hurting. I will move toward you. Compassion. I've just done Manjushri. Oh, I see what's going on. I'm much more clear about what's going on. That's the functioning of wisdom. So I may or may not decide to look for another job. I may or may not say, hey, can you please pick up your wet towel off the bathroom floor? I may or may not decide to work on the campaign of a different elected official. But do you feel it? I'm starting that activity in the world, in the external world, from a place of clarity within me about where my suffering is actually coming from right here, and about who is ultimately responsible for that, me. And therefore, my action in the world, I'm going to get really Marshall Rosenberg right here. My action in the world, Max's action when he goes to work, is going to be about connection. I want to connect. How come this is happening between us? How come there's this dynamic between us that's hurting us? What's going on here? That's a desire to connect, rather than our normal default setting, which is the default of the ego, control. Get rid of you, change you, have power over you, something like that, right? Fundamentally, we're wired to either connect to something or to try to control it. And being human beings, 9 times out of 10, 95% of the time, we want to control stuff because we imagine that it's going to change our experience. So I'm getting too abstract here. What I want to really leave you with, Max, and leave all of us with, and including myself, because of how often I need to be reminded of this, is one of the beautiful promises of Zen. Sometimes it's said this way and sometimes it's not. But one of the beautiful promises of Zen is to just see something has enormous power. Just see it. Well, what do I do? Just see it. I'm lonely when I go to work, and I feel frustrated and scared when I go to work. Just see it. I see it. I see it. Yeah, but what do I need to? No, not yet. Just see it. Just see it. Because can you kind of feel how that? Oh, but what do I? It has a reactivity to it. It has an urgency. It has a grasping. No. Just see it. Because in the teachings of Zen, to see something is to be non-separate from it. It's already a verb. It's already an action. There isn't a seeing and then something to do. Seeing is a do. I already did it. It's a verb. I did it. I saw it. I saw it. I saw it and I saw it. So the nature of that witness has tremendous transformative power for us. It just has tremendous transformative power. So just see it. Just see it. Just see it. I wish we had more time because now I'm all curious about Max and I want to know what the circumstances is and I want to know all the details. I just want to get in there and find out what all that is. But until I see you again, Max, just see it. Just be very curious about Max's experience. It's tremendously valuable, his experience. So allowing it and seeing it and getting closer to it, I promise something will change. Okay, I hope that's helpful. It's okay if it's not.
We have just one more question from you.
Yeah, I was curious about the to take it back to the old man and the chicken, I suppose. I feel like we have that same relationship with ourselves where we have to listen long enough to understand that there's something going on underneath. And you mentioned the order of the 4 foundations of mindfulness that directs us to put our feelings before our mind. There's like some wisdom in trying to direct your attention to matters of the heart when you realize that layers of denial or avoidance.
I'm sorry, I'm losing. I heard this first part of that, but then everything got airy and fuzzy for me.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, I just wanted to I just find like with my own experience, I've found like layers of anger maybe on top of what I'm coming to realize are maybe some vulnerable hurt feelings, and I rarely have access to that vulnerable part. And I realize that those are, it takes me back to what you were saying about the four foundations of mindfulness, or the skandhas, where the Buddha directs us to the heart, maybe before he does to the mind. And I'm wondering in our own practice if there's wisdom in maybe directing our attention to matters at the heart that we're avoiding, or should we allow things to sort of play out in their own time? Do I sit with the anger, or is there a way to get to the vulnerability that I believe is underlying?
Yes. Did everybody hear that one okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh God, what a great question. Thank you. What's your name?
My name's Ken.
Ken.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's such a
Okay, a beautiful question. What a beautiful question. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer. Only because I think that's really personal, But here's what I can say about Ken. Ken knows something incredibly important that most people do not. I'm not trying to make you feel special or better. You're not better. You're just Ken. You're infinite, right? But I'm dead serious when I say Ken knows something. All of us listening know this same thing, which is, oh, there's a lot underneath there. There's something underneath there. Secondarily, he knows something else just as important, which is the thing underneath is hurting. And so Zazen now becomes an incredibly sacred container. You get to use that container however you want. And some days we show up and we sit down in the zafu, sitting down on top of that zabuton, and we cross our legs and we form our mudra and we face the wall. And what I need today is for that space to be quiet and still. That's what I need. I need it to be a refuge. That's what I need. I need to feel safe for 30 minutes. And so all I'm going to do is body and breath, and I'm going to calm my nervous system, and I'm going to meet my need for safety. And I'm not going to follow any of those breadcrumb trails today because my skin is thin and my heart hurts and the anger is intense. And the most skillful thing I can possibly do is create some of the clarity in that silty glass of water that we talked about. That's beautiful. That is time well spent. And then perhaps, this is how it shows up for me, perhaps the very next day, my skin is feeling a little thicker. I'm doing all right. Today went okay. I've had my tea. I see the anger at the top, but I'm feeling a little braver today. My back is a little straighter today. So I'm going to breathe into that anger and spend a little bit of time listening to its narratives. And I'm going to start to get some pretty important clues about the nature of what's underneath it, exactly like the chicken guy. Ken already knows anger is a secondary emotion. It's even tertiary. It's up here at the top. It's designed to keep us safe. It never shows up unless we've been hurt. It never shows up unless we at least imagine that we're being hurt, right? So we trust it. It's there for a reason. But we also know acting from it, not skillful. Expressing it, yes. Acting it out, no. We come from a nonviolent tradition. And Ken is wise enough to know that underneath that anger, there's going to be something a little harder to sit with, perhaps some fear. Perhaps underneath that is some memory of hurt. Perhaps underneath that is something even deeper like shame. I don't know. But now Zazen can become the container of, is there something underneath? Is there something underneath? Is there? And what I want you to hear is what happens to my voice when I describe this. This is me, I get very slow and I get very kind and I get very intentional, and I remember my grandmother and how she approached me when I had fallen, skinned my knee, had a thorn in my paw, whatever, right? Hands up, unarmed. I'm just curious. If you have a story you want to tell me today, Anger, I'm here to listen. If you don't, that's fine. I will not push, but I promise if you start talking, I will stay. So can you feel the uprightness of that? It's that's why your question's so beautiful. It's not a, oh, I want to get to what's underneath, because you can feel that there's a dismissal of the anger and a desire to break past the resistance. No, 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 no. That's me wanting. Instead, this is me going, I promise you, I will stay here. If you want to approach me, I promise I will not hurt you. I will not criticize you. I will not judge you. Anything you give me, I will hold with tenderness. I will hold with reverence, and I will be curious. So can you kind of feel? I'm making it sound like there's two different Zazens. Really, there's just one. But what I completely trust in this conversation is Ken's suffering, Ken's pain body knows what it wants to share and when, and Ken's Avalokiteshvara knows exactly what she's got to do, which is just stay there and let it happen. And sometimes a little push happens, of course, because it feels kind, and sometimes the push doesn't happen because it feels a little, well, pushy. Is that helping, or is that making it worse, Ken?
No, wow, that's helping. That's really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. This is the kind of stuff that's such a great, all these questions are great. This is the kind of stuff that we bring to our teachers, right? In one-to-one, right? If we have the opportunity to meet with the teacher, have a practice meeting, a dokusan, if you have a spiritual director or some equivalent of just somebody that you can go into some of the more specific individual expressions of how Dharma shows up for us. Zen is wise enough to really emphasize the one-to-one, right? There's general teachings we give to everybody, but the way this is going to show up for Ken is going to be different than the way this is going to show up for Pam, which is going to be different than the way it shows up for Max, right? And so having the opportunity to sit down with somebody and say, hey, what do you think about, gives you an opportunity to go into some of the particulars, and I think it's really, really valuable. So yeah, that's great question. Thank you for that.
All right, thanks everyone, and to the show. And the closing chant.
The many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
The many beings are numberless, vowing to carry them across.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Greed, anger, and ignorance rise endlessly, vowing to cut off the mind road.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Dharma gates are countless, vowing to wake to them all.
Buddha's way is all embracing, vowing to follow through.
Buddha's way is all embracing, vowing to follow through. Thank you again for your teaching.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll put our cushions back and then bow out. We're going to have a short tea and conversation, and then we're going to have a work practice for those who can stay and do some work practice after that.